Hello, hello. Welcome back to the 5 Yards 5. This is a weekly show with myself, Ali Maxwell, and him, George Ellick. We are
Me.
5 Yards ambassadors, and we get together this time every week to discuss the 5 Yards game and the players on it. Anyone that's caught our eye this week and some new players going on the platform towards the end of this video. We're really excited to reveal some of the names going up this week because the 5 Yard Scouts have been working unbelievably hard since launch to get every single user's first player request up on platform. And we can now say that every single person that requested a player has had their first player request put on 5 Yards as of the end of this week. So it's a magnificent effort from our scouts. Well done to them. But ultimately, we are trying to beat the scouts when playing 5 Yards. So we'll be talking about two of the new guys on the platform later on. George, before we start our 5x5 analysis, just catch me up on some of the purchases made on site over the festive period. Who was popular on 5 Yards?
It's interesting because you'd think the popular players would normally be the ones who are young and who are coming through, but the most popular, Edinson Cavani. Maybe not a massive surprise because some people would have thought he was maybe over the hill, but early signs at Manchester United suggest that he's still a pretty good striker, even if he doesn't really start very often. Rodrigo de Paul and Bruno Fernandes, Rafinha and Daniel Marlon making up for the other ones. A few in the EFL, Jozwiak, the Derby winger, Emi Buendia, Morgan Gibbs-White, no longer EFL, just recalled by Wolves from his loan spell at Swansea. He's been popular since the word go, so I guess people holding on to a bit of Gibbs-White, quite excited that he might be playing in the Premier League if he's fit. Michael Olise, Gustavo Harmer, Rico Henry, all proving very popular indeed. So those are the guys who you guys are enjoying. Now it's our turn to tell you who we think you should be buying.
My only festive purchase was Rafinha, who was clearly popular. He was one of the names in there, and things have started very well. Very well for me and Rafinha in 5 Yards terms. I'm looking forward to the window opening again on Friday, maybe doing a little bit more business. But that Cavani, that name jumps out, doesn't it, as you say, and it kind of speaks to the different ways of playing 5 Yards. Of course, we want to be the ones to find the next superstar, the next wonder kid, and to have them in our squad from the get-go. But there is value to be had with older players as well by trying to get in front of a good month or two of performance pay. And I guess that's the thinking behind Cavani. I'm actually going to talk about one of his teammates, Marcus Rashford, or Marcus Rashford MBE, as I should call him, his full name, of course. Now, he is unsurprisingly, towards the top of 5 Yards in terms of player pricing. He's £71 million. It's probably around 20th overall, or just inside the top 20, I would say. In the 21 to 25 age bracket, he's the 8th most expensive player on the game. So he's a really interesting prospect, I think, because there is both a short-term aspect to this. Interestingly, one of the things that flagged him up to me was looking at the fixtures in the Premier League over the next month or so. United have got some pretty nice fixtures in the next four. They have got Liverpool away within that period, but they've also got Burnley and Fulham away from home. Of course, they've been brilliant away, haven't they? And Sheffield United as well. And I just have a feeling that for Rashford, whether it's for 5 Yards or whether it's for fantasy football, whatever it might be, I've got a feeling it could be a good month of January for him on the pitch. I think in 5 Yards terms, that means we might see some PP returns and maybe, if that's the case, another price rise if he's really looking good. He has got 4 in his last 5 in the Premier League, so he's been in good form recently. And again this season, when you look at the sort of key top line attacking stats and metrics, he's always towards the top, isn't he? Now that now that he's growing into his career, this season he's in the top 10 for goals, for assists, for non-penalty expected goals, for shots on target as well. So interesting from a short-term perspective, Rashford for sure. But for the mid-term, it's an interesting one. This is why I wouldn't go for a strong buy here necessarily. Remember, he's not going to be raking in the performance pay from now to the end of the season because United are out of the Champions League, and that's where he's earned 2/3 of his 7.8 million in PP already this season. Europa League performance pay doesn't come close to Champions League performance pay, so I wouldn't get too excited about that. But of course, United's good form has put them in with a very strong chance of Champions League football next season. The current odds suggest a 75% probability. So I think we can expect Rashford to be playing Champions League football next year, and that's where he really did very well this season. Long term, he's just a really interesting one for me. He's only 23, Rashford. I think people forget that because it feels like he's been around for a while. He's got quite a lot of mileage on his body, quite a lot of minutes played for a 23-year-old attacking player, but his general fitness and injury record is pretty good, I would say. And crucially for me, at this moment in time, it's very difficult to imagine that Manchester United would be looking to move him on or for him to fall out of favour completely for quite a long time. And you can look at the history of Manchester United and their young players that come through the system. You can look at how popular he is as a human being, as well as his development and his skills as a player. So I think if you're looking to hold Rashford for a long time, you can at least be very confident that he's going to be playing and starting games for Manchester United for the foreseeable future. And I'm talking 5 years plus here. So I think when considering him in 5 yards terms, everyone's going to have an opinion on how good they think he is now, and crucially, how good he can be in the future. Whether he'll ever be considered one of the top forward players in the game, I don't know. Maybe he won't quite reach that point. But at 71 million, I think he's this is what it's all about. I think he's a fascinating price. I think there'll be some people who really want to be on board long term. And I think there'll be people who might think that seems a bit high. So Marcus Rashford, MBE, the first player to think about this week on 5x5.
Yeah, next one, another Premier League player, I guess, because there's no Champions League stuff that I'm going to talk about is Heung-min Son. I like talking about players that I've watched fairly recently, so they're fresh in the mind. And I watched Heung-min Son scoring the second goal for Tottenham last night in the Carabao Cup semi-final against Brentford. And he's been in brilliant goal-scoring form this season. And I think it's probably fair to put that down to something of a hot streak. I think he scored 12 goals in 16 games so far this season from 4.6 expected goals. So that suggests that this run of goal scoring probably is unsustainable. But the idea that means that he's not a buy, I think, is wrong, effectively. I think if you look at his track record in his career at Spurs in the Premier League, it stacks up to being a bit of a PP monster. He's got 65 goals and 35 assists and 176 Premier League appearances. That is decent record. That's 100 and 176 goal involvements. And also, you look at his age. He's 28 years old. He turns 29 next summer. And that initially would make you think, how long is the longevity here? But I think what we're seeing in recent years, Jamie Vardy is a key example. If players are 28, 29 years old and are playing a style of football and a means of football which belies their older years, he's 2 years younger than me, for God's sake, but there's no reason to think he can't carry on playing at this level well into his 30s, I would say. Vardy himself, if you look at the way that he's continued to score goals and continued to play, he's still got that searing pace. I remember when you and I interviewed Gary Taylor-Fletcher, who's an old teammate of his, and he said that Leicester say Jamie Vardy's in the best shape of his life now. And with Son, I think that's fine. I'm happy to basically draw a line through the 28 years old because of his style of play, because of the form that he's in, and be happy to think that he can probably carry on playing at this level for another 4 or 5 years. So as soon as you do that, and as soon as you strip back the fact that he's probably over-scoring at the moment, his career record is good. And I think he'll be playing at the top level for a long time. He will want to play Champions League football. That is an issue, and he's not at the moment at Spurs. Of course, there's every chance that Jose Mourinho could take Spurs into Europe next season. But we've also seen that a fair few European giants on the continent aren't too bothered about forking out a lot of money for an older attacking player. We've seen both Spanish clubs do it. We've seen, the money that went into the Juventus deal for Cristiano Ronaldo. So I'm not putting it past Son making a move at some stage in the next couple of years to play Champions League football, in which case, of course, he would again be open to that PP. I think knowing Daniel Levy as well, he's somebody who'd probably be quite happy to cash in on an aging asset and probably rather do that than with Harry Kane. So there's a lot to like here. Andy Francis scouted him up on 5 yards and had him as a buy when he was valued 49 million. He's now 47 million. He's actually he's gone down 2 million since then. He has him as level now 90, potential 90. I think that's probably fair. We're not going to necessarily see him improve from here, but if he continues at the high level he's on, he's a world-class player. He scores goals, gets assists, even if he's not going to continue scoring at this rate. I still think we've got a guy who's going to be playing at the top level for a long time, who could even get a transfer to boost his value further.
No matter what you think about Son, I think we would have all liked to have bought him and added him to our squad at the start of this season. I think it's fair to say. I'm actually going not too far away to Spurs' key rivals, Arsenal. And this is for a player who maybe we're not that keen to hold in our squad overall, a sell, if you will. And I wouldn't be having Thomas Partey at £30 million as he is on 5 yards at the moment. Firstly, to say, I mean, we shouldn't need to caveat it each week, because I think so far in this section we've spoken about Messi and De Bruyne, basically some of the best players in the world. But of course, I will say, for the sake of not being attacked by the Arsenal masses, that I think Partey's a brilliant player. And I think his return from injury, which I think is imminent, will make Arsenal a whole lot better. And added to their good recent form, it makes me relatively excited for what could come for Arsenal over the next few months. This season has been hampered by a thigh injury, two lots of it, really. He came back too early and was injured in that first half against Spurs on his return. He's been out again since then. But I would say that he's barely missed a game in his whole career through injury up to this point. So generally his injury record, very, very good. Of course, with 5 yards, we know that the Champions League it's not the be all and end all, but it's hugely important for performance pay. It just dwarfs every other competition that you can play in for performance pay. And last season, Partey got 7.4 million in performance pay, but 5.2 million of that came from Champions League sort of outcomes. And that was with Atletico Madrid, of course, who are basically a lock for the Champions League every season. But Arsenal haven't been in the Champions League for 4 seasons now. I'm very confident in predicting that they won't be in it next season. And so if you're thinking of having any Arsenal player, but Partey in this instance, I mean, how confident are you that Arsenal will either next season finish in the top 4 in the Premier League or win the Europa League and qualify that reason? I mean, I would say that's more likely not to happen than it is to happen. So on top of that, someone who doesn't score a lot of goals, doesn't assist many goals, in PP terms, it's really just wins and the odd goal and assist that's going to get you there. So even if, I tried to be really generous predicting Partey's output, because of course, when you're buying a player on 5 yards, you should sit down and you should try and map out how you think it's going to go over the next 3, 4, 5 years. You can basically get your calculator out and guess how many PP returns someone's going to get, and that'll give you a good idea of whether you think it's value or not. Difficult for me to see Partey racking up much PP over the next 18 months, 2-3 years, even if Arsenal win 50% of their Premier League games from now until the end of the season, and then 50%, 19 wins out of 38 next season, let's say, which would be a big improvement on this season. If he starts every single game between now and the end of next season and gets, let's say, 5 goals and 5 assists, which would be pretty much his best return, that'll be £5.2 million in PP from the Premier League. And let's say that Arsenal get to the semi-finals of the Europa League this season and the semi-finals of the Europa League next season. We'll give him 14 starts in Europa League wins and a goal and an assist as well. That's about the right rate. So another 1.6 million. So in my projections, this is just the way that my brain's working in 5 yards terms. That's 6.8 million for Partey in the next 18 months, at which point he'll turn 29. And that's with maximum availability and very generous projections in PP terms for him and Arsenal. So at that point, you'd have got £6.8 million in PP, and then you'd be after really another 4 seasons of at least 5 million to get anywhere close to that £30 million valuation that he is at the moment. And his price is only going to decline due to his age. So for me, I don't think he's an asset to a 5-yard squad that will hold value. And therefore, if things aren't going well, you can kind of get out easily. I actually think the value is most likely to depreciate. So I guess the big question is, would he ever get a move from Arsenal to another elite team, like a team that goes deep into the Champions League every season? It seems unlikely at his age, and probably given his wage at Arsenal as well will be very high. So there you go. A brilliant midfielder who I think improves Arsenal loads when he returns. But just when we apply 5 yards thinking to it, someone that I would certainly be leaving alone. And you might disagree. And that's the beauty of 5 yards.
No, I do disagree. I do agree. I do agree with you.
I didn't mean you personally, George. I meant the viewer.
The collective you. I'm going down to the EFL, which is our bread and butter, and an Oxford player, which is my salt on top of the butter, maybe. But I mean, it's exciting for me as an Oxford fan to be able to talk about an Oxford player, and Rob Atkinson is going up on 5 yards at some point in the next couple of days. So I don't know what value he's going to be going up at. I'm very excited to see what the lads have come up with, because, and I'm almost tempted not to do this because I'm scared they're going to watch it and bump him up a bit, which would be actually disgraceful, if you ask me. I'm really excited about a player who, he's a left-footed centre-back, of which there aren't very many going in English football, in the EFL. They're a pretty unique talent group because everybody would like to have a right-footed and left-footed centre-back. Atkinson joined a year ago straight from Eastleigh in non-league. He was known as the Vanarama Van Dijk at Eastleigh for his ball-playing abilities out from the back. He's 6'4", so he's a physical specimen. So he's a decent defender. He wins a lot of duels in the air, but it's his ball playing which really stands him out because he has the ability and the tendency and the willingness. When he gets the ball at his feet and he looks up and he sees space in front of him, he just runs into it. And he's got this bizarre running style where, even though he's 6'4", he has such quick strides. He's not like one of the centre backs like a Tony Adams who kind of galumphs up the pitch. He just loads of little touches and he manages to shrug off the defenders coming near him. It is remarkable, and it's lucky that Oxford have a player in Alex Gorin who's kind of positionally so responsible that he can kind of drop in to fill the space that's exposed by Atkinson. And he didn't really come into the team last season. He was given time to kind of bed in at League One level. He's now a starting centre-back for Oxford. And every week that goes by, it becomes very, very clear that this 22-year-old is destined for much, much higher things. It's not going to be long until he's playing in the Championship or the Premier League. He's got some kind of pedigree where he came through at Fulham. So he's got that kind of Premier League academy behind him. But he's just a player who, when you look at, if you're a manager looking to the EFL, he kind of ticks every single box because there aren't many players who can do what he can do. And so given the right coaching and the right amount of time, 22 is incredibly young for a centre-back. I mean, I think, not to quote our friend Harry Redknapp, but I think he's going right to the top. I think he's improving very quickly. He's not, right now, I don't think he's a Championship centre-back. I think he would benefit by carrying on playing games at League One level. But he's improving very, very quickly. And it's not going to be long until he moves on. So, I mean, I'm hoping he's going to be... I mean, he's a League One player still. So I'm hoping he's going to be...
Well, let me tell you the prices of the current League One centre-backs on 5 yards. I mean, Ross Sykes of Accrington is 1.8 million. Very, very cheap. Dan Ballard, Blackpool, 4 million. I think he's on loan from the Premier League. Lewis Montsma, 5.5 million. Jacob Greaves, the Hull youngster, 6 million. And Akin Famewo at Charlton is 8 million, but he's also on loan from a higher level. In the Championship, you've got Rob Dickey, who Atkinson replaced. He's 6.5 million on 5 yards, and Harry Suter is 9 million. And then way above them, you've got Mark Guehi on loan from Chelsea, of course, at 15, and Nathan Collins, the young Stoke centre-back, at 19 million. So I'm interested when you hear those prices, what you think Atkinson, where we might be looking there.
I reckon probably just below Montsma would be my hunch, because Montsma
you'd be all over
goals. That. Yeah, I'd be buying. Yeah, I would be.
Good.
And I think he'd just be a really exciting person to have in your squad on the game because he's a great player to watch. And it gives me a bit of a heart attack watching him for Oxford because you do think, like, where are you going here? And it's going to go wrong sometimes, as often it does with brave players like that. But yeah, he's an exciting one. I just hope he's still our player at the end of the month.
I know firsthand that he's been involved in plenty of scoring moves for Oxford this season with those gallops upfield because you message me every time with a lot of capital letters and a lot of exclamation marks. Atkinson is one of 21 players going up on platform as this week comes to a close. So please keep an eye on our Twitter account, 5 yards on Twitter, 2 underscores between the 2 words, because that's where you can see a list of all 21. I mean, eye-catching names amongst them, Emil Smith-Rowe, who has been big for Arsenal the last few weeks, Jacob Ramsey of Villa, Alexander Sorloth, Liam Delap, Japhet Tanganga. As I mentioned at the top, we're now up to date with all first-time requests. So when you join 5 yards, if you requested a player, they are now on 5 yards. You can add them to your squad as soon as you like. But the player that I'm going to talk about, who I think is really interesting for us as followers of the EFL, is Philip Zinkernagel. Not just because I have been saying his name out loud regularly over the last week, because it is very, very rewarding. But yeah, Zinkernagel signed for Watford on a free. They managed to do some clever bit of, bit of cleverness really to get him confirmed before the Brexit withdrawal from the EU, not to get political, but that would have held this move back. But Watford got it done before then. He joins from Bodo Glimt on a 5.5-year contract. And for someone his age, that's pretty impressive. That'll take him into his early 30s on a free transfer. And you can't help but to be really intrigued as to what to expect from this guy, because many of you guys watching will know that Bodo Glimt, one of the best stories of 2020 basically was Bodo's Norwegian Premier League win, the way that they did it, and also some of the individual players that they had at their disposal. Zinkernagel got 18 goals and 19 assists, 37 total goal contributions in the Norwegian Prem last season. And his relationship with Junker, the striker, and Jens Petter Hauge, who now plays for AC Milan, was absolutely amazing. So I think there will have been quite a lot of people somewhat surprised that he has landed in England's second tier rather than a top tier division somewhere else in Europe or beyond. So I just can't wait to see how this goes. And I don't think, look, we don't know what price he'll be up on 5 yards just yet. So we'll wait and see. I've got a few reservations for this, just in the sense that it's easy to get blinded by the goals and assist totals. He was the most creative player in the league by miles. He took a ton of shots, the most in the league, the most from long range. He scored a lot of set pieces and set up a lot of goals from set pieces. Everything clicked for Zinkernagel last season. It was the perfect season for a player like him, who both created and scored a ton. Now, before that, the 2 seasons prior to last season, 6 goals and 3 assists in one of them, 6 goals and 7 assists in the other. And I just wonder if there's an extent to which Zinkernagel and Bodo and some of those other players just met at the right time, came together at the right time, and everything clicked at the right time. You often see it with teams who perform above expectation. Quite often, it's almost like the perfect storm. And almost always, those players get picked off by richer teams, either from the same country or from abroad. And although this is only anecdotal and I haven't done research on this, it quite often feels like they don't perform quite as well, or seemingly don't live up to expectations as much as they did at the team where they had the perfect storm. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on all of these Bodo players. I haven't seen a ton of Zinkernagel, so I won't say that he's great or say that he's rubbish, but I will just say those numbers are so eye-catching. If he can get anywhere close to that sort of production in the Championship after a bedding-in period at Watford, then we've got a serious player on our hands. But you can't say that Watford is the most functional place right now. You can't say that they've got a very clear style of play, a load of players who have played together for a long time and who have great chemistry on the pitch. And so it's not going to be easy for Zinkernagel, that's for sure. 5.5-year deal means that he's got plenty of time to bed in. He's got Ismail Assar probably to displace first anyway. But yeah, I'm just interested to see how Zinkernagel translates to Watford and to the Championship. Hopefully we'll get more of the same output that he had at Bodo last season. So those are the two of the guys, Atkinson and Zinkernagel, going up on 5 yards at the end of this week. The transfer window is open on Friday, and hopefully maybe some of the people we've spoken about today, maybe some of the new players going on platform, or maybe something else that catches your eye, you might do some business in the Friday transfer window. And that's been us on the 5Y5 this week. Join us next week. Let us know if there's anyone you'd like us to break down, like us to analyze on this show. We're more than happy to take suggestions. And we'll talk again next week.